I'm gonna go ahead and get started since we only have 30 minutes.
Right.
So, look, Tasha, we can do this again, beyond this festival. So we'll talk, all right?
Yeah, let's talk. Let's go for it.
So first, I want to thank everybody that's here for joining us for the part 2 of the Food Justice Panel or Roundtable. We had one on Tuesday, which featured myself, Tosha Phonix, Lord, and Gender Rose of Known and Grown. And today we have a new person, Leah, who's to my right, Leah Burnett, and we're going to continue the conversation that we had starting on Tuesday and go over some questions that we didn't get to touch on. And, hopefully this is just as fulfilling as Tuesdays, which I know it will be because look at these women. The greatness is ridiculous. So first I want to give an introduction. First, I'm Victoria Donaldson. I'm the program manager for Green Dining Alliance, which is a program of Earth Day 365. We work with restaurants in the St. Louis region to help them reduce their environmental impact through their service and through their practices. And that's just a quick general idea of what I do. So Tasha or Leah, whoever likes to go first, you can do it.
I'll let Leah go first.
Oh.
Go ahead, Leah.
Okay, so my name is Leah Burnett, and I am the founder of a grassroots nonprofit, Growing Food, Growing People, where we are passionate about getting healthy food to our people and fighting this food justice fight. So I'll keep it very short and brief. Of course, there's much more, but hello, everyone.
Thanks, Leah. And Tasha?
I'm Tosha Phonix. I'm with Missouri Coalition for the Environment. I'm the food justice organizer. Leah also sits on the board of the Food Equity Advisory Board. She's one of the growers that I work with. Y'all know me, I can be long-winded, so I'm gonna just keep it just that brief because I had my introduction.
You did, but it's fine, you can talk about yourself. There's nothing wrong with it. So let's get into the first question, or kind of like the third question that we didn't get to reach on Tuesday. And you all can, of course, speak on your different perspectives of your role in the field, but what are specific injustices you all recognize within the St. Louis area and even across, different communities in the United States or globally, whatever you can speak on directly?
Go ahead, Leah.
Pretty broad question.
I mean, Leah, I'm gonna let you go because I know I can go either way.
Leah, you go first. I know Tasha got a lot to say about it, so go ahead.
Yes, and I'm gonna give Tasha that. So one of the injustices that I see, and I will always talk about until it is no longer an injustice, and that is the limited access that we have to healthy food. We do not have adequate access to food that sustains our body and promotes healthy development for the whole family. So that is, in my opinion, that is one of the major injustices in our community. And then it leads to so many other injustices. And of course, it all derives from systematic oppression, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, so I think across the region, we see in different communities that lack of access to food. But I think that language, I want to talk about language. I want to talk about the language that we use to define things, or language that people use to define things for marginalized communities. Mama Kern Washington of Bugs, the Black Urban Growers Conference that happens, and Rise and Root Forum deemed our areas food apartheid. So just the language, the basic language of calling our area is deserts. And so for me, that deserts is something natural occurring. There's nothing natural not being able to go out and get the food that you need to be healthy and that you need to provide for your family. There's nothing normal or rational about only having access to corner stores who offer poor healthy foods. There's nothing normal about going into some of these stores and being disrespected. There's nothing normal about your children going to these stores being ripped off, your young girls being disrespected. And so that's why I started, like, that's injustice. I think that also the narrative that is pushed, that somehow our communities don't want healthy food, aren't growing healthy food, and on doing the work to improve our communities around food access. That narrative that's always presented, where someone else has to come into the community and create community gardens for us, or someone has to come into the community and bring us fresh, healthy food, introduce that to us, when that's just not the case. It's not the case anywhere else around the country, and it's definitely not the case in St. Louis. I've been growing for about 8 years, and the people who taught me how to grow were Black growers who tried to incorporate growing inside the school system, who tried to do growing in the community. But when you don't have access to some of the resources that others have, you kind of do the best you can, and try not to have a burnout. So I think that, like, the language is some of the biggest injustices that we see, and that creates a barrier when we talk about young people. So I just got off a webinar with some young people who are into food, who want to do food justice. And if they're not being taught the history of them being into food justice, how can they possibly serve the community like it needs to be served, when you don't self-recognize yourself in this movement, in this fight? When you're gonna always think that someone else has to come in and save you, when we've been saving ourselves since we've been here.
So let's, I want to get more into the language, and obviously I just want to get a solid kind of answer, if possible, on what is the right term or terms that can be used to describe what is truly the injustice of food when it comes to Black communities and other communities of color. So food apartheid is like okay. So
that's the term that's the term that we've come up with. Food desert was never a term that we said and put on ourselves. Food desert was the term that the USDA, who we've known been systematic racist to Black rural farmers, put on us and said we live in a food desert. And desert or places that are without or dry, and so now it's life here. We got life. It's full, even when we don't have access to the best or the healthiest food, we're able to make do, and so it's not anything that just happened by happenstance. This was systematically put in place. There's no way that Natural Bridge and Kings Highway should have that many fast food restaurants. That's legislation. That's zoning law. Then they should exist. There's no way that a Target or a Snooks should be able to exist in our community and get all these tax credit. And when the tax credit up, they leave without any kind of recourse. And so, yeah, food apartheid is definitely something that I know that the growers that I work with use that terminology, and those in the broader food movement, we use that terminology. Food desert is something that I guess that the USDA has deemed it, and and put a title on something that we haven't titled ourselves.
So what about the term of like insecure or secure or whatever, how they kind of put it in the same context of a food desert? It's the reaction of like food insecurity, or what about that language?
So I think when you talk about food insecurity, and you can look at it on a larger scale, food insecurity it's those without food. Even white families, even white children go without food. right? And so, but we're talking about communities that are marginalized, that even though a country has a national limit of food insecurity, we're looking at 20 times higher food insecurity in Black and brown communities. So Dora Cooper gave the best definition of food apartheid. And so I'm paraphrasing, but she said the lack of access to fresh, healthy, culturally relevant food and the means to produce. So it's not just that we don't have access to food. We're being kept away from producing that food as well. So the food and the distribution, we're seeing Black farmers get pushed off the land not by the Klan in the South anymore, but by the USDA, by not giving them the resources they need. Here locally, growers have always wanted to buy land in the city and grow, but they find that it's harder for them than someone who's not in the community. So we get put in things like garden leases, or we or we're told that go through this program or partner with that person. And some of these systems that we see, they're not systems that are going to alleviate the problem. They only put a band-aid. And so when we talk about what food justice is really racial justice in the food system. So it's looking at it from a racial justice lens. It's looking at marginalized communities.
So let me, Leah, do you have anything to give on that? Do you have anything to give on that?
No, Tosha has really said it all, to be honest. The only thing I was going to say is, empower the people and let them own their land. Stop putting caps and limits on us. You empower people by ownership. In my opinion, leasing is just like borrowing. I mean, let me have that power to grow for my family and generations to come and my surrounding communities. Let me grow the sweet potatoes and Tosha grow the green beans, and then you grow, whatever else we want to eat, and we operate in that capacity. That is part of it too. But go ahead.
No, that was, thank you. So I want to know, what can we, like, whether it's us three or just normal everyday citizens who don't have a direct, I guess, connection with food and the way it's accessible in certain communities, what can we do collectively and individually to counteract those, legislations or ordinance, or just general, conversations that are related to how, again, Black communities and other communities of color lack the same resources when it comes to food as white communities?
You want what? Leah?
Anybody can take it.
So listen. So here's the thing. I sit on the board. I sit on Tosha's board. First of all,
This is not my board.
I've been growing. I've been growing for 3 years. Tasha's been growing much longer than me, and Tosha is teaching me a lot. So a lot of times when I am brought into these spaces, I'm learning from her just like everyone else. But what I will say from a community, from a residential point of view, and not from all the political and legislative, all those type of words, I let Tosha handle that. What we can do is we can start growing food. Start empowering yourself by growing some food, whether you live in an apartment, whether you live in a 3-story house, whether you are, kind of displaced right now. There is still an opportunity to grow some food and make sure that you and your family is eating what you're growing. So part of what people can do on a small scale is begin to grow your own food. Because of this virus and everything that's going on, you see some stores have even stopped people from being able to purchase seeds because they know there's power when people start growing their own food. That's what we do. That's who we are. So I think on a small scale, just to get started, start growing some food.
See, look, Leah got it, right? No, but so I think so when you talk about what can be done, there is no one size fit all. We know that we are not a monolithic people. And so what I always say is that everybody isn't a grower. I get it. But everybody can contribute. You don't have to be out in the sun. You don't have to be out in the heat. I was talking to Heru, and I told him, I said, get your children involved. And you know, there is a disconnect with our children or young people informing as it relates to our history. How do we get our young people involved? Do they have to form? Get those that's interested, but expand their minds. We're in the age of social media. I told them, hire your child to be over the social media of your farm. And so finding creative ways to get everyone involved, because one of the things that I stand on and that I believe is that food is going to help us turn around our communities. That's what we're going to see. The wealth gap decrease. We're going to see the generational separateness that we've seen decrease. And so all of those things, and it's not just about growing food, but that was the first profession, was food, and then animal husbandry. But we're in the 21st century, so what all can we take from the land, give back to the land, and learn and incorporate things coming in the 21st century? So find your fit into agriculture from what you're good at, and it doesn't necessarily have to be growing. On a political side, you know, those who are in policy, right? So I go to National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition twice, right? And so when I'm there, it's always a caucus, and it's a people of color caucus. And so now I get to see us on the policy side, not necessarily growing, but on the policy side. On the policy side, I get to see us. I'm sorry, that was my son. But on the policy side, I get to see us working, and I get to see us pushing legislatively against some of the policies. And so my thing is that as we are working on policy, there has to be that other piece of the movement who are working on practical applications and programming. But we can no longer be separate. We can no longer say, oh, I'm gonna work on policy, this is the way to go. I'm gonna work on food justice and grow food, this is the way to go. No, we have to come together and everybody play their part and everybody do their part. And we're gonna see that change in community. We're gonna see how, you know, that we come together and we can make effective change.
Okay. I think I agree. And yes, I agree with everything y'all just said. It's interesting because for me, I come from a very unique background to get into this food thing as like an artist, musician, I'm a DJ. So for me, coming into this like realm of, learning about the inadequacies of access and, quality of food specifically. And then I moved right back to North City right when all of this happened. So it really shined a light on my community from what it was to what it is today, and how nothing has changed since I left and came back. Yeah. So, but with that, I recognize like within North City, there isn't always the, not everybody know how to grow, like you said. Not everybody has that skill set, and not everybody has to do it or even try to do it. But just to know the significance and the importance of growers, and especially Black growers in these communities, or any grower who is a reflection of that community that they're in. And knowing that if there are other ways that you can support them, whether it is buying from them or helping them in the logistical side of it to manage, whether it's sales or social media, or pushing them in whatever capacity you can. And it's interesting because, like, I want to get more people in my community involved, but I don't know how. And that kind of like pulled the answer out. Like, all right, this is how they can get involved. They ain't gotta grow. They can just be, you know, voices of that, you know, of that movement, basically. So I'm actually, yeah, we only got 7 minutes left. I want to first give the floor to anyone, any you know, viewers, a chance to ask questions if you have any. If not, I do want to give Leah and Tosha a chance to give some final thoughts and words and advice, tips, whatever you think would be helpful. We only got through 2 questions again.
Because 30 minutes is not enough time.
It's not.
For this
I agree.
conversation.
Like I said, Tosha and Leah, I'm gonna add you into this conversation.
Great.
But I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more, and we can see what we can do after this. All right.
Yes.
So, does anybody have any questions? Any of our guests have any questions? No? I'm not seeing anything pop up right now. So, with that, I want to give both of you a chance to, you know, share any final thoughts and, again, ideas, tips, or anything that you think would be beneficial to the people who are watching now, and even the people that are watching later. This is recorded, so it'll be up on our website, and people can watch this right after this. All right. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
As far as, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I just love the conversation around food justice in general. So thank you again. Any final tips? I would just say find where you fit in to this fight, because it's a fight, you know, and it's enough room for all of us to play our parts. But I know that food is one of the key components, and I will be in this food justice fight forever. I will always make sure that healthy food is available for us, because we deserve it. Mm-hmm. We deserve that in our body. We deserve the option. Whether we choose to eat it or not, we deserve that option. So I'm just grateful to be in the position to fight this fight. So I would just encourage everyone to, you know, wherever you fit into that spectrum, at least go put your hands in some soil. There is so much life and energy in the soil, and we need it right now in this climate. So just go touch some dirt, some soil, you know, just go do it. And that's all I have. But thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tosh.
How much time I got?
Final words. You got 2 minutes.
All right, bet. Okay. To the people who are listening, always, I mean, support is always helpful. Funding is always helpful for grassroots organizations. To the region of St. Louis, we have to be the change we keep talking about. We talk about equity, we talk about change, we talk about changing the system. You can't change the system until the system is allowed to be changed by the people it's mostly impacted. So what my final thoughts are really is that if we really want to change the system, if we really want to see a difference in the food that we eat on a larger scale, Man, you got to shift that power. Shift that power. I'm just gonna say, shift the power. I don't feel like a Chuck D song about to come on now. I'm just joking.
I mean, this is, you know, it's interesting that, like, you know, we work to advocate for, you know, people when it comes to injustice, whether it's like police brutality or, you know, access to like welfare benefits or whatever when people need it. But we don't think about like the lower end quota that, and that's like food, like the basic essentials of life, food, you know, supplies and whatever you need to run a household. And yeah, you have to create kind of like the space to recognize that this is a fight. This is a part of a movement. This is a part of a movement that is supposed to enhance our way of living collectively, not just for, you know, for communities of color, but for everybody. Because when we good, y'all good too, you know? You know, and like it's a, you know, and it kind of, it's been reflected upon, at least on my end, when it comes to this whole pandemic. We depend on each other. Like individuals and collectives, we depend on each other. And the access to food and where it goes, whether it's to the grocery store or your local farmer's market, we see how it is being affected, that supply chain is being affected through this pandemic. And that shows that we are literally connected in every single thing that we do in life. And we have to support those people in those areas that we consider lower or less than, whether it's the farmer or the grower or the person who, you know, picks the food. We have to recognize that those people are just as significant, and we have to advocate for them, just like we advocate for the people who need that food, just like we advocate for the systems that are needed to allow us to have access to those foods. So yeah, that's that. Elizabeth had a question. How can we participate in advocating for farmers and growers of color if we are outside of the food movement? And that, I think Tosha kind of went on that with like, if you have like a skill set, like whether it's an artist or somebody who's like in marketing, like social media, though those skills can be very tangible for whether it's like a farmer or a grower or the movement as a whole. So anything else other than those particular examples?
So also to add to that, I don't know if Elizabeth is a part of the environmental movement, but food justice is environmental justice. Food justice is social justice. Food justice is the basis of every social ailment that we have. The Black Panthers did a breakfast program for food, but they were fighting police brutality. Fannie Lou Hamer went to the Capitol to talk about the injustices in the South, but Fannie Lou Hamer was a farmer. So food justice has been the basis of every movement that we had. So I think it's more, the question, to the answer to that question is more so, how are we shifting the power in the movements that we're fighting currently to make sure that there's equity, to make sure that the people who need to be at the table or at the table, and if they didn't create their own table, respecting their table and asking, can I help uplift your table? You know, and so that's how you advocate. That's how, you know, you promote. And then for the white allies and the white advocates and things like that, I can't say it enough. You see the injustices from some of these organizations. Speak out. We need more than allies at this point to see a whole shift. We need accomplices. Yeah. Let's get linked. Let's get handcuffed together.
I agree.
Not literally. I'm not going to jail.
No. It ain't for everybody. For those who have like you said, everybody has a place in the movement. Don't get arrested. Don't videotape the arrest. And then others go tell everybody such and such got arrested. So you gotta figure out.
I might be like granddad. I might be like granddad.
Everybody gotta play their part.
Granddad come with his raincoat on.
Hey, no.
Like late to the movement.
Right.
Justice said, food justice equals environmental justice. Yes, making it more visible within the environmental movement, respecting the table. I love that. Accomplices. Yes. So, yes. Thank you all. If there's no more questions, I'm gonna go ahead and call it. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Tosha, for doing this. I hope everybody enjoyed the virtual festival. This is the last day. We do have one last thing going on right now, and that is a yoga session with Yoga Buzz. So feel free to go back to our website to click on that link and get you some stretching in. All right. So thank you again, and you all be great, peaceful. I'll see y'all.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank